What is going on, peeps?
Hello.
I'm here with my lovely bride, Heather, and stoked to have the opportunity, kind of in a rush moment here. You know, those days I just left the radio station after we finished shooting Pastor's Perspective and got down here and scrambled and sat down, and here we are.
Here we are.
And fortunately, Haley got rid of our biggest disruption, right?
Yes. Yeah, she took our English bulldog and took him for an hour drive because he would terrorize all of us.
He would terrorize us all.
Even though he's super cute. So we'll have to have him make an appearance at some point. But
yeah, he's a noisy dog. But I did get some time to make myself a coconut latte.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
I taught him.
Cheers.
And I have my green tea. So I've already had coffee for today. So.
Well, the reason we wanted to talk to you is we know that, you know, so many people are messed up with mental health issues. And fortunately, we have it all together. And so we felt like we could come and really just,
Who else better to talk to?
Yeah, right. Like, no, we don't have it all together. I have it all together. She doesn't have it all together.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think we know who really has it all together.
So it's Mental Health Month, May.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about what that means.
Yep. Well, I mean, I just know personally, I am just thrilled that there's a whole month dedicated to mental health awareness because honestly, it's just not talked about enough. And to think that they've created a whole month just for that. And I was talking to Bobby last week and I was like, we should jump on and do a live around mental health. If there's anything that we can relate to or help with, I would think it would be mental health and mental wellness because we've been on our own journey most of our own life. And Bobby and I both just kind of feel like we need to help others. You know what I mean? If you're the best way you help people is through transparency and being there. So May is Mental Health Month, and here we are. And we want to just tackle some of these issues and walk through some solutions and things that we've done and that have helped us through the years and just hear your questions.
Yeah, mental health, this is language, right? Depending upon how old you are. I don't ever remember, for example, when I was in high school hearing about mental health. And then as a Christian, it was always about sin, right? And so if anybody was to talk about their issues as it relates to anxiety, worry, depression, it was sin. So one of the things that when we talk about mental health issues is I like to remind our listeners is there is this pitting where you have those who make everything a moral issue, and then sometimes everything's a mental health issue. Not all mental health issues are necessarily moral, and not all moral issues are necessarily mental health issues. Sometimes it's one or the other. Sometimes it's both, and it takes wisdom and discernment. So, for example, we think about emotions, and emotions can really affect our mental health. And there is a good side to emotions that we don't often hear about, like the negative emotions. Like we think fear, anxiety, worry, it's all sin. Well, fear can be good. If I'm in the ocean surfing and I look beneath my board and there's a great white and I feel fear, that's a good fear in that moment. You know, like you should feel some fear. Now, can you imagine being out in the ocean? Someone's like, oh, it's very sinful for you to feel fear in the midst of a great white. Well, that would be a proper response in that, right? So that would not be irrational fear. In the same way as it relates to worries, there can be good worries, but then there can be bad worries. There can be sinful and non-sinful anger, right? Be angry and do not sin. So there's righteous anger and there's unrighteous anger. There's righteous worry and unrighteous worry. There's righteous fear and unrighteous fear. So a lot of people in the church beat themselves up in the name of, boy, I just feel angry. Well, you should feel angry. There's a reason you should feel angry right now. That's righteous anger. And so I think that there's a lot of maturing to do in the church as it relates to understanding our psyche, moral issues, mental health issues. And I know this is an area where my wife is incredibly passionate. So maybe just to give our listeners just some context and viewers, what are some of the mental health issues that you feel like the Conways can bring to the table and relate to, so that people can feel like we're not here to throw stones?
What issues do we not bring to the table?
Yeah.
No, but really, I just think this is so important. And I think for Bobby and I, we have dedicated most of our ministry life, married life, just really wanting to break down those walls and get real talk here, because there are so many people that are suffering in silence. They're lonely, they're depressed, they're anxious, and they really feel alone. They feel like there is no one to talk to. And that's what's heavy on my heart. You know, as a nutritionist, as a holistic nutritionist, I want people to have holistic health. And I think you can't really have physical health without mental health, and vice versa. So I think for Bobby and I, just really finding that passion and breaking down those walls so that we can start talking about it. Because during this quarantine time, I mean, honestly, I think the next big wave that's going to come from this pandemic is mental health. I mean, you have, 30 million people out of jobs. You have people that are sitting in their homes day in and day out. Some people have no spouse, no kids, no one to reach out to them. And they're sitting at home and they're very depressed and they're lonely and they're sad. And we as leaders in the community, if you're a pastor, elder, teacher, therapist, friend even, we have to equip ourselves and we have to learn to break down those walls so that people feel safe and seen and heard when it comes to mental health issues. So I just know this whole pandemic is only going to spur that on. And so that was even more of a prompting for me to want to come on and just, maybe some of you guys out there are feeling alone right now. So hop on. You're not alone. This quarantine has been extremely hard on me. Just being vulnerable in of myself. I've really struggled with my own mental health during this shelter in place because, I like to be out. I like to see people. I like to smile. I like to go to coffee shops. I like to go to restaurants. And we don't want to make those things idols, but at the same time, God's made us as human beings to want to connect with people. And I have just really struggled. It's been very, very hard for me. And it's really triggered some of my own pain and trauma that we've been trying to deal with this past few years. It just brings it up. I think maybe because you have more time on your hands, or I'm not sure what it is. So really just wanted to put it out there. And I think for us, you can talk a little bit about your own journey, your mental health journey, and tell us a little bit.
Yeah. Well, when you think about mental health, to be mentally healthy would be to be in a place where we perceive reality as it is. And when we are mentally unhealthy, it messes up our perception of reality. So isn't it interesting, for example, when our emotions like anxiety or depression and despair or worries and fears, when those things are accelerated out of proportion, it then skews our perception of reality. And when our perception of reality is skewed as a result of some of the unhealth going on our inside, that can create a lot of hopelessness. And so what we want is think of the idea of, we want our emotions to correspond to reality. We want our perception of reality to be what reality is. Because a lot of times, people who aren't in a mentally healthy spot, their perception of reality is skewed, their emotions are skewed, and everything is discolored in their world. And so when you think about being mentally healthy, think about a world not where we're trying to put heaven on earth right now, though that would be great, but it's a world in which we're able to recognize, you know what, my emotions are skewing reality right now because I'm so hijacked by my fears, or I'm so hijacked by my worries, or I'm so entrenched in my depression. And so isn't it amazing? I mean, like, my daughter said something funny to us the other day. She was talking to Heather and I, and she was feeling a little bit of funk, and then she had some coffee. And after having a few sips of coffee, cheers, Haley, what happened is she found herself going, oh man, God, it's such a beautiful day. You're so wonderful. Oh, look at everybody. They're so friendly and they're so nice. And what she came to realize is the few sips of coffee all of a sudden changed her perspective on reality, right?
So coffee cures everything, people. Don't we know this?
Exactly.
We can shut the live down now. Everyone knows. Coffee is the cure.
Exactly, right? So, you get a good buzz going, a good coffee buzz going, and you're like, man, yeah, things are great. But then it wears off. And so all I'm saying is depending upon our emotional state, we can feel like we can move forward in life, or we can feel trapped. And so we just want to say at the outset is to be mentally healthy then is to be in a place whereby your emotions aren't just way thrown out of reality. You're not living in OCD thinking and obsessive thoughts and constant negativity. And as a Christian, we aren't opposed to thinking about some of the great findings in neuroscience. Like, neuroscience wants to just come to answer everything. Like, if you're an atheistic neuroscientist, where it's scientism, where science can answer everything, and we have no need of belief in God. We can figure this out. I don't think that's healthy. But nor do I think it's healthy when people in the church would say, there's nothing that we can learn about the brain and the cognitive faculties and how it influences our decision. And my wife is a nutritionist, understanding how foods can impact us and sugar inflammation can mess us up. All this stuff plays into our well-being, which then can in turn affect the way we understand reality. So that said, I would say for me, my mental health journey goes back to being a young kid. I think for the most part, kids, when they're, 4 and 5 and 6, that can kind of be the golden years, right? That can be a happy season. But once, puberty kicks into place, then all of a sudden your emotions can start getting hammered. You're starting to think on your own and your mindset and trying to come up with a worldview by which to live. And if you're a parent of teenagers, you can see a significant difference from those golden years to, wow, and from the prepubescent to now they're going through puberty, and you go, wow, what's happening to my kids? They're emotionally all over the place. And this is where some of the mental health issues can really start to impact it. Now, isn't that interesting? Going through puberty and hormones and how all of that begins to impact our mental health.
Yes.
That's an interesting thought. So for me, I would say probably around that 12, 13, 14 years of age, anxiety started to just overwhelm me. And when I was a teenager, early teenager, we weren't thinking about like how foods impacted your mental health and how foods impacted your emotion. You would learn that exercise is good for you. But what ends up happening is if you're like me, you struggle with alcohol and drugs to cope with your anxiety. So that's what, kids start turning to drugs and alcohol because, wow, I feel anxious. I don't know what to do. I'm not mentally healthy, so I need a quick fix. So they turn to drugs, they turn to alcohol. And that just exasperates the problem because now the drugs and the alcohol, what does that do? That messes up the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for self-control in the brain. So people are anxious, they turn to pornography, they turn to drugs, they turn to alcohol, they turn to overeating. And then it starts breaking down our self-control center. Yes. And this is where I feel like brain health can be so healthy.
Yes, I love that. And I wanted to go back up. I don't know if we can scroll up, but I think it was Kelly.
2 fingers right here.
I'm just a little challenged here. Okay, so she had mentioned, it's fine, I kind of know. Oh, please talk more about the definition of holistic. So I was going to get into this a little bit later, but I can touch on it right now because I think that is so key. And we're going to get into Bobby's journey and how he's gotten off his meds and all of that here in a minute. But holistically speaking, what I mean when I say that is I approach healing holistically, meaning if you think about how God created our body, he created all of our body systems to intertwine. We're spiritual, we're physical, we're mental, we're emotional. And if you think about traditional medicine, they really like to treat those body systems like they're in silos, right? So, hey, you have high blood pressure, let's take a blood pressure medicine. You have high cholesterol, let's take a cholesterol medication. You have anxiety, let's take an anxiety medication. And what I mean and what I do with my clients is I practice holistically, meaning I believe God's made us all those body systems to intertwine and to connect. And that's God designed. He did that first. So ultimately, God's the ultimate healer. And I think we should touch on that first and foremost. But realizing that if we really want to heal, we have to look at all of our body systems and realize that our brain health is connected directly to our gut health. And science has actually proven that now. And these are some things that we have done with Bobby to help him get off some medication. So when I'm talking holistically, that's what I mean, meaning we cannot look at our body as individual things. Everything is talking to each other. It's like an information highway, our body is.
No, that's
and
good.
Everything is connected, talking, and we have to treat it like that. And I'm really thankful.
And not medicate the individual silos exclusively.
Yeah, and I'm not here to bash on medication,
No.
but I think there is a time and a place for that. But I think in a perfect world, we would use that medication really only as a life vest, right? I'm going to get on this to get over this tragedy, to get over this trauma, whatever I'm dealing with. But then I'm going to really look at my body and I'm going to respect my body and love my body and listen to my body and give it what it wants and desires and what God has created it to have. And I think we do that by looking at how all the body systems work together. So that's my passion. So that's what I do as a profession. And also getting ready to start my master's in counseling. So I'm super excited about that too.
Yeah. So for more information on my wife, there's her Instagram if you want to talk with her more. So the funny thing is my wife's getting ready. She's been, committed to me and the kids, with getting the kids raised, now that we have adult children, but, serving for, over 20 years in ministry, and she's counseled many people. It's kind of funny because I picture these young people coming out of their counseling programs with their master's degree, and I know my wife would counsel them under the table. But I'm just saying, so but here she is at midlife and going to go get a counseling degree because, you need the piece of paper, so to speak. And I'm like, my goodness, all your years in ministry and just being married to somebody like me is an education in counseling.
I've had a student for 24 years.
Yes.
Now.
Yeah. If that is so true.
And myself.
But, one of the things that I find that's discouraging is the way that the church can view mental health. And this is something that we are passionate about speaking on, because people to talk about mental health issues, it can almost be a real stigma. It's almost like sometimes people can be real superficial as it relates to depression. They'll say something like, hey, just snap out of it. Just get over it. Well, I'll tell you what, anybody who's ever known true depression would never tell somebody who's depressed, just snap out of it. Mm-hmm. So pray to God that you never have to experience it, because just to say, oh, just snap out of it, or just don't be that way, is a telltale indicator that somebody has no clue about what this really is. And if you're out there feeling depressed, depression is different than just sadness. All sadness doesn't necessarily entail depression, but all depression entails sadness. Mm-hmm. And depression, the smallest things like returning a phone call can be so difficult to even imagine. Getting out of bed, cooking, there's a sense of hopelessness. And so, you think about like our brain, our heart, our heart's an organ and our brain's an organ. And over time, our hearts, this world takes a toll on us. Well, the brain's an organ and it takes its toll as well. And what can happen is I think there's a direct link even to people in their 40s slipping in to some of depression. They don't get in some of the natural serotonin and dopamine that they might have got when they were younger. And I'll tell you what, it can create some real sense of emptiness. Not only that, there's people that are, did you want to say something?
No, go ahead. I'll go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah. I was just going to talk about Henry Cloud, but I can do that in a minute.
Okay, yeah. Well, we'll let you do that. What was I talking about? I'm feeling kind of
We're a
mental.
mess.
Yeah.
Well, before he moved on from the church aspect of it, I really wanted to put this resource out there because honestly, the local church is so ill-equipped to handle mental wellness issues. They just are. They just don't know what to do with it. They are just truly ill-equipped, and it scares them. They make it a spiritual issue or a moral issue, and we have to stop that stigma. We have to get that stuff out there because there's people in churches who are going to church for help. And so that leads me to tell you about a resource, Dr. Henry Cloud. I don't know if you guys know who that is. He's a very well-known psychologist and author, and he actually just came out with a curriculum during this pandemic, although he had created it way before the pandemic. So it's really sovereign that this is coming out at this time. But it's called, I think it's called Heal the Church or Help the Church. Oh, Church That Heals. That's what it's called. Church That Heals. And I was just going to read a couple quotes from him because I think it's so good. So if there's any lay leaders out there, pastors, elders, deacons, I highly suggest you guys get this curriculum because it will foster you in helping your people in your church, because we have to stop isolating people. We have to stop shaming them. We have to stop making them feel alone because we all struggle. Everyone's struggling with something. It's just, are they talking about it? And I want the church, just as I would want pastors, teachers, me as a nutritionist, I want to help facilitate healing in people and not shame them. And so I just think it's so important that we get that out there. But you can go ahead and talk. I was going to pull up a couple of quotes by him. Oh, here they are. It says, now more than ever is the time for the church to rise up and be the place where the hurting people find the healing they need, which I so love that. So that's where we need to go. Where else should we go? We should be going to the local church. We're sending people out to secular psychologists to heal them. No, we need to be that to the body of Christ needs to be that for each other. And it starts at the head of the church. And then it says, helping the church become a place hurting people run to and not away from. So I just love those two quotes. And I just love Dr. Henry Cloud. So I just want to put a little plug in for him because I think he's great.
Isn't that a great statement? Helping the church be the kind of place where people want to run to and not from. And for all of you out there that have known what it's like to be shamed by a local church, to be quarantined, to be isolated, to be looked down on, to be looked at as you're just sickly, you know how horrible that can feel. And sadly, there's a movement coming up, called progressive Christianity. And progressive Christianity, is a heretical, viewpoint, right? It's this whole idea of, people who have been burnt out by legalism or just everybody turning everything into a moral issue, and they rebel against the church, and then they end up losing their theology and everything else, which is sad. And I really think this issue is something Heather and I want to be committed to. And so I'm thankful for Cloud coming out with something. And so if you're in a local church and you have an opportunity to lead, make sure you look at this, because the church needs some tools. Some of the things are going to need to happen is, how do you get rid of the stigma on mental health? People get fearful sometimes. Like, you start talking mental health, you have to assure people, we're not saying that there's not moral issues. I mean, you know what I mean? Everything's not a mental health issue. So assure people that. But what is the damage that's being done to people? Maybe you're a parent and you're trying to raise your kids, and your kids are going through a tough time. Can you imagine your kids have some mental health issues and they're really suffering, and you're just trying to parent your kids, do the best you can with what you know and your limitations. But then the church comes along and they go, well, you're a bad parent because your kid's in this spot and you can't get a handle on this, and what's wrong with you? And you start getting shamed, and the church has to get with it here. And this is a big burden of ours. And so check that particular resource out. Now, I can tell you this, as it relates to mental health, I ended up on an antidepressant about 6 years ago, Lexapro. And I was talking to a counselor, and he said, Bobby, you're out in the middle of a lake. It's like you're drowning. And a life vest, what that will do for an antidepressant's like a life vest. You still have to swim to shore, but now you feel like you can get some air in your lungs to do it. Whereas before you were just drowning. So I think that medications and stuff, that's not our place here to talk about that or prescribe that. I think it needs to be a last resort. I mean, we need to make sure that we're not jumping on something too quickly. We need to make sure maybe there is a sin in my life I need to confess, and I don't need to anesthetize myself. But once we go through a process and it's a last resort, it can be a tool. And I would say for the last 5 or 6 years, I was on it. I was in a horrific season of doubts 5 or 6 years ago. And I wrote Doubting Toward Faith, coming out of my doubts. But it wasn't like I was trying to just be this emergent church, sinful guy with my doubts. I was studying like crazy. I mean, I taught myself to be a speed listener. At seasons, going through a book every single day. I was processing some of the great literary classics and going through all kinds of philosophy. And I could not chase down answers as fast as my questions were being produced in my brain. And I ended up in this existential crisis of faith, which the Lord would bring me through. But the thing is going into that doubt sent me into a season of deep, dark depression and despair. Well, why is that? And it makes perfect sense, doesn't it? I mean, if you love the Lord and you love God, and everything you prepared for in life is to be faithful in ministry, and now you're doubting the whole thing, that's going to be depressing. And that's what was happening to me. And my wife, I mean, she saw the emptiness and the horror, and it was hard. I go, God, I don't want these doubts. But I realized he was using that season to prepare me to be more empathetic, to understand questions that people have, to really be able to minister in this culture. Well, the antidepressant helped me for a season because I can have some OCD tendencies. And it allowed me to unlock a little bit because I was so fixating on analyzing my doubts and my questions, and I could not unlock. And Heather would be like, just unlock. You need to feel like I can't unlock. I'm fixated right now. Well, I tried over the last couple of years at different points to come off the antidepressant. But for the last month or so, I've been weaning myself off. And now I'm on day 5. And for me, I feel fantastic, and I'm not even on an antidepressant at all. And
here we are in quarantine.
So here we are in quarantine, right? Like, what a time.
And he decides to get off medication. No, but really, it was for years. I had been kind of wanting him to try to get off because I was like, you're a healthy guy. You take care of yourself. You're doing everything else. You're exercising. You're eating pretty good. And I really feel like when we put those medications in our body, we are messing up the chemistry. And it's not really optimal the way God really intended it to be. So I was like, I think long-term, you're going to be happier if you can find a way to wean off of those. So begins the journey. And I had been working on him for a few years. And
sleep. Like, I struggle with needing a little bit of something to help me to sleep at night just because I'm an insomniac. I'm a creative type. So my brain comes alive at night. And I was like, so it feels really good. But I'm still really struggling, to be honest with you, with insomnia. Even though I'm not taking anything to help me sleep, it's very difficult for me to fall asleep. My brain is very active. But the thing with like the Lexapro, it created some cloudy thinking. My motivation wasn't as strong. I felt a little bit more nappy and tired. And that's my brain feels really elucidated and clear right now. And so I'm thankful for that. But I'll say, I would in a heartbeat, if I was ever in a place of despair and feeling like I couldn't cope, I would see it as a tool that we could utilize under a doctor's prescription. So I just feel great though, to be able to say, hey, I tried to get off, but here's the thing. My wife does stuff with Amare, and this is a lot of the kind of the product stuff. And a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to one of the guys that works with Heather. I'm trying to get this.
I'll go through them here.
I was trying to talk with. I was trying to, share a little bit about my thoughts with this. I would try this sometimes, and I didn't really notice the impact. I know I've tried to get off the antidepressants a couple times in the past, but I said, if I'm going to share about this product, I need a story that I can really believe in, because I don't want to just share a product to share a product. But I'll let my wife tell you a little bit about this, not because we're trying to be like salespeople or anything like that, but simply because as we're sharing, I got on an antidepressant. I tried to get off at different times, but I really started taking some of these supplements in the process of weaning off of the antidepressants. And I found myself feeling really in a good emotional place. And I was thankful for that. And that's what these things, are aiming to do. So as we're kind of getting ready to wrap some stuff up and take questions, here was the goal. It's Mental Health Awareness Month. We just wanted to jump on and say, we get it. And if you're out there, let's just say kudos to people wanting to make some progress. We wanted to share a little bit of our story. We wanted to share a couple tools with you. So like Heather mentioned, Cloud has a tool for the church. And then we want to be able to even share a supplemental tool that my wife can help you with. And which, by the way, go over and, make sure you friend my wife if you need counseling. She does life coach with people. She's a nutritionist. She can help you with any of this stuff. Hit her up. She's fantastic, and you can count on her to be willing to help you with that. And so after hearing about this, then just if you have any questions about mental health, what it looks like in the local church to talk about mental health, how the church can be looking at things a little bit differently, anything that you want to talk about. If you're going COVID crazy.
And who isn't?
We're here just to minister to you right now. That's the point. So feel free to ask your questions, and we'll be checking those out. So talk about these products, hon.
Yeah, well, it's really more than just the products. I really want to just take a few minutes just to educate. So going back to that holistic perspective, and how I approach my own clients and when they work with me, is science is finally catching up to all of this, because for years and years, when I used to talk about, probiotics and take your fish oil and here's some natural things you can do to feel better, people would literally look at me like I had three heads, because it just was not socially acceptable. It wasn't medically acceptable. And so the good news is science is finally catching up with this. And we actually do have scientific data proof that there is a huge connection between mental health, mental wellness, and our gut health. It's scientifically proven, it's out there, and we can do so much to heal our gut-brain health. And it's done primarily through what's called the gut-brain axis, the GBX. And so that is really my area of expertise. I like to educate around the gut. I like to talk about the gut, geek out on all things gut. So because I grew up with a lot of gut health issues myself. So it sent me down the path that I'm on professionally to study and learn more about this. So I definitely approach it from a holistic standpoint. And so really getting back to, they're finding that a lot of people that do struggle with anxiety and depression, even irritability, hormones, all these things, it's really going back to the gut, because the gut is the second brain. I don't know if any of you guys have heard that before, but that's what it's called. It's called the second brain. And really, it's kind of the first brain in terms of the way it senses things. Our gut is what's bringing in information from the environment and sending that information to our brain. Our brain is communicating back to our gut. And when our gut and our microbiome is not healthy, you got to picture our gut down there. It's like a little tropical forest, and you have good bacteria and you have bad bacteria, and you have good guys and you have bad guys. And you really, really want the good guys to outweigh the bad guys. And the society we live in does not set us up to have the good guys outweigh the bad guys. We eat too much sugar. We eat the SAD diet, the standard American diet, full of processed food, full of sugars, full of salt, full of soda, fried foods, alcohol, you name it, we're putting it in our body. So people are following that SAD diet. But I think with just a few little things that we can do, simple tweaks we can do in our life, I really think we can start to feel better. And I think people get so overwhelmed by health, like, oh, what's the new trend? And what's this? I got to be keto. I got to be paleo. I got to be this. And you really don't. You can really just narrow it down to just a few simple things. And all science is pointing back to all health starts in the gut. So that leads us to Bobby. me wanting him to take that seriously, because for a while he was just like, okay, hun, whatever, I'm not doing it. But he's done it and he believes in me, right, hun? So
Yes.
yeah, because our gut, 70% of our immune system is in our gut. And 95% of the neurotransmitters that communicate with our brain are produced in our gut too. Hormones like serotonin and dopamine, those are our happy hormones. Happy, we need those to feel good. Those are produced in our gut as well as in our brain, but they're mostly produced in our gut, and people do not know this. So my passion is to educate people around that and realize, hey, if you're having some mental fog, you're having some hormone issues, you're not going to the bathroom regularly, whatever it may be, it could directly be related to your gut, and it probably 99.9% is. So we want to give our body what it needs. We want to get those good bacteria going so that they're happy, producing our hormones, helping us feel better, get our endorphins kicking. So that leads us to a couple of things that we would just like to share. And if you're interested, let us know. We would be happy to share these products with you. But I am partnered with a mental wellness company. It's actually located here in Newport Beach, and love them. We know the doctor.
Wait, 1 second before, because I see if Susan, if you're still on there, this lady's getting triggered.
Oh.
And so because I mentioned medication being a last resort, and she said, well, for bipolar or schizophrenia, it's a first resort. And I'd say that's a fair catch, Susan. Don't get triggered by just, we're keeping mind, we're two people trying to just help people and share, and it's easy to say something. And by last resort, as a pastor, for many years, you would see people who would have some struggles, right? And they would just look to medications for first things first, instead of trying to think, well, maybe there's other things. There are people, of course, it depends on what the mental issue is. If it's schizophrenia or if it's something like that, for sure. But you don't just jump on a medication without first evaluation. So you evaluate before you medicate. That's what I would be trying to say with that. So that's a good point. But I see she's getting really triggered. I'm not exactly sure. So I just wanted to make sure we help her. She says, I have extensively studied the mind-gut connection. And well, feel free to ask what you want, Susan. We'd love to help you, but thanks for pointing that out, because I wouldn't want anybody to feel.
Absolutely. Hey, and that's great, because, like I said, sometimes when we're dealing with these mental health problems, we need that life vest. We need those medications to get us over that hump. So if that's what you're doing, then good for you. But let's also look at other ways too, to go in tandem with that. So yeah, like to now, as you talk about this, just to kind of set you up for that, I like what you're saying, because again, it's not always like maybe the church is saying, just confess your sins and that's all you got to do and you're going to be well. Okay. Yeah. Or sometimes the church will say, you need to get in the word more. Well, I mean, when I was in that doubts, just going crazy. And if somebody says, oh, you just got to get in the word more, bro, you don't understand. That's where my problem's happening. I'm in there and my brain is so tweaking on the word. I'm trying to fit everything together. I need to just step back and figure out how to approach the word again. Mm. So we think like we're being super spiritual to say, just get in the word, just confess. Well, we need to get in the word. We need to confess, but it's not always that simple. And it's not always as simple as just take medications. And it's holistic. And you're talking about how you need to look at all the different things. And so that's why what you're hearing is stuff on nutrition, mental health. Sometimes it's medication. Sometimes it's confession. We have to figure out a lot. And we so often just want simple answers and we don't want to think. And this is why you can obviously hear my wife talking. I'm like, I feel for her that she's got to go work on her degree. I know you're excited about it, but I'm like, she's a bright lady, right? I mean, she's informed. She's thinking through these things. And so. Yeah. And that's why we do this side of heaven, guys. We're not going to be perfect. We're going to struggle with anxieties and depressions and maybe things more severe, maybe our entire life. But my hope and my prayer is that I could give you some coping mechanisms, some lifestyle changes, some supplements that you can take, and always filter it through God, because God is the ultimate healer. We need to use the word of God as our first line of defense. We need to be quoting that scripture. There's so much in the word that talks about renewing our mind. We have the mind of Christ. We have to take every thought captive. All of those things is warfare against the enemy, because the enemy came to kill, steal, and destroy. And we're not going to let that happen. We're going to do everything we can to foster wellness in people. So that's that. So all that to say, yes, Bobby has been on medication for 5 years. And so I finally was like, okay, hon, I would love for you to, just try these products. You don't have to like them. It's fine. We're sharing, not selling. But if you want to know more, you can definitely hit me up. So basically, the first thing you need to do is you have to get your gut back in check. You have to get that microbiome healthy. So my main thing
and
is
explain microbiome. Like if somebody's out there, they're going, I've been thinking about my microbiome,
Well, the microbiome goes back to what I was talking about. We have that rainforest, right? As a simple analogy. And our gut, picture our gut as a rainforest. You have good bacteria and bad bacteria. In the world we live in, with the food we eat, the things we drink, just the soil that our food is grown in, all of that is destroying our microbiome every single day. Stress destroys our microbiome. Everything basically is out to destroy our microbiome. So we have to be super duper intentional in what we put in our body to keep that microbiome healthy. And so in a perfect world, we would eat good, we'd exercise, we would live stress-free. We would never have a cocktail. We would never have too much caffeine. We would never do any of that, but that's not the world we live in. We want to live, we want to enjoy life. So there are things that we can put in our life so that we can enjoy those things. And that's supplementation, exercise, food. Food is the number one thing. But if you're wanting to know some practical solutions to help our gut health, then that's what I'm here to share briefly how long do we have? So basically, I was just saying that I'm partnered with a mental wellness company here in Newport Beach. It's called Amare Global. They're the only mental wellness company on the market that is actually targeting the gut-brain axis. And I'll talk about that. So basically, you have your gut and you have your brain. They communicate to each other through what's called the axis, and that runs between our brain and our gut. And it's always sending information back and forth from the brain to the gut. So a lot of people, like I was saying, that struggle with mental health issues also have gut issues. So if we can get that gut healthy, we can get the microbiome, the probiotics, the prebiotics, the phytonutrients really kicking in your gut, then you'll start seeing some relief in your mental wellness as well. Usually with Bobby, it has helped him. I mean, I'm amazed. It's helped me. It may not help everyone. I'm not promising or selling anything. It's not going to cure anything, but these are just things that you can do. So
just building awareness so that we know what options are so we can be as healthy as possible.
Yeah. So I would just say the first thing you need to do is be on a really good prebiotic and probiotic. Those are my number one and number two things. And so basically, I'll just kind of show you, not that it really, okay, and I always get confused here too. Okay. Well, here we go. This is called Minta Biotic. So basically what this is this is kind of all that good bacteria and bad bacteria I was talking about. You do 1 scoop of this, you put it in your smoothie in the morning, and it's giving you the prebiotic. And a prebiotic, all that is it's food for the probiotic. And the probiotic, what that is it's just good bacteria going into your gut to help you feel better, fight off disease, prime your immune system, develop stress resilience, dial down the inflammatory responses in your body so that you're healthy. That's really all that is. So you really need a good prebiotic and a probiotic, and they're definitely not all created equal. So even if you don't want this particular one, that's fine, but do message me, because the strain of the probiotic absolutely matters, because so many people are like, well, Heather, I did that and it gave me diarrhea, or I got more irritable or whatever. So there's different strains for different things. There's strains for mental wellness. There's strains for bathroom problems. There's strains for all that. So this
all right,
is that.
So how do we get through a couple?
That's it.
Oh, did you want to share about those?
Yeah. So these go together. So this is for your brain. This is Minta Focus. So you take this for your brain health. So you're doing this first, probiotic. This is for your brain. This is for your immune system. So you do those 3 things. They are priming your body to feel better, to get all that good and bad bacteria in there, and it's good to go. So this is what you've been doing every day, right?
Yeah. Just trying out these different products. And again, you can hit my wife up and she can talk with you more about that. What we're going to do now is just take a look over here in the comment section and see if we can field any questions that you might have, for my wife as it relates to some of this nutrition stuff, or either of us for whatever it might be. So I'm going to kind of go through here and see what we got. So Kelly, I saw you've hit me up earlier, so I just wanted to make sure. You said, I really believe in nutrition, but what do I do toward horrible depression? My son hates me to no end. This feeling is awful.
Man, Kelly, I'm so sorry. That is, there's really nothing more horrible than the feeling of depression, just that feeling of emptiness and hopelessness. And so first of all, I just want to say I'm sorry. And, we'll definitely be praying for you in that. But like I said, fighting off with the word of God is my first line of defense, really praying through, asking God to show you those scriptures and speaking that. And then also just, yes, you said you do eat well. I believe in nutrition. So, food is food changes your mood, right? So if you want some practical solutions that can really help dial down that depression, is just really cutting out, you want to eat foods that love you back, right? We don't want to eat foods that don't make us feel good, right? Like donuts, you might get a momentary high, but honestly, you're not going to feel good in about 5 to 10 minutes. You're going to feel bad. It's going to give you that spike, and then you're going to go crashing. So you need to take out really all sugar if you can. You want to dial down those inflammatory responses. Beating. I know. Womp womp. Now I'm the bearer of bad news, right? But you want to take out that sugar. You want to take out the processed foods. You really want to give your body good things, lots of greens and fruits.
Yeah. And I think though, with some of what she's saying too, it's a bigger than even a food piece, right? Yeah, like you're saying, oh, my son hates me. Yeah. So like Heather's saying, here's some things you can do nutrition wise that can help maybe for you to have a better fight for the battle. But I love this idea of VCR that Heather and I heard by Dr. Wilder. And it's this idea of validate, comfort, and
redirect back
into what?
Relational. You're like getting your relational circuits back on track.
Yeah. So when there's tension, you're mentioning like my son hates me to no end. There's when we feel that kind of relational tension, a lot of times the reason there can't be reconciliation in a relationship is because one or more parties aren't willing to validate somebody's pain. So they just think, just live with it, or this is how it is, or, you just screwed up, or you just need to be there. And without first validating. So what ends up happening is family cycles or relational cycles or conflict cycles. The amygdala can get hijacked, right? Every time we're you ever feel like you've been in the same argument 1,000 times with your spouse or with your kids? Well, pretty soon you're just programmed to operate and respond the way that you do. Your amygdala gets hijacked. It feels threatened in this particular circumstance, and it feels as if you've been there 1,000 times before. And in order to really find some therapeutic healing, we have to learn to validate each other. And when we are struggling in our relationships with loved ones and friends and people, we often want people to get our side, but we don't want people, but we don't want to give them the validation that they need. And so I would say, whatever you can do as a parent, just trying to figure out, look, is there anything that I can validate about my son's pain toward me? Is there anything that I've done that I can just own? Like my wife overly beats herself up for the mistakes that we've made as parents. And like she feel a lot of guilt. It's amazing. Like, man, we screwed our kids up on this one, or we jacked them up on this. And I'm like, hon, look, come on.
Mom guilt is a real thing, guys. So.
Mom guilt's a real thing.
And we have to give ourselves that grace, but it's so hard as mom. So Kelly, I'm really sorry. I'll be praying for you, because there's nothing like just having a dysfunctional relationship with one of your children. It's just so hard when that's just not where it should be, but we'll be praying for you, and you hang in there for sure.
Yeah, but just got to give each other space sometimes, and just trust the Lord, and just, if we could just, learn to show compassion and be gracious with each other. Let's see here, but I would encourage you to get counseling too, because that's not anything, we can't get into the context and all that. That's not, what we're designed to do here. So I'd say if you can get a counselor, that can really help you to walk through this. So let's see here. Please email me the connections and the prices so we can get those prebiotics. Okay, I'm sure you can do that, right, Heather?
Yeah, if I have her contact information, I can. I don't see it there. I see her name. Hi,
yes,
Denise.
Leave your contact information then.
I'll reach out to you,
Heather, or reach out to my wife's Instagram handle.
For sure.
Robin, so much for Fish Friday.
Wait, what?
The Fish Fry Friday.
Oh, hey, Robin, she's on. Help.
We're back.
We left. Here we are.
Yeah, this is what happens when I'm working with technology. Amen to the mind of Christ and take every thought captive. Yes.
Yes, we have to. We really have to retrain our brain. I mean, I read something the other day that said it shows that our brain is hardwired to be more negative, right? So if we hear something, our brain's hardwired to focus on the negative rather than the positive. And, that is so true, right? I mean, you can hear one negative thing about yourself or read one negative comment, or someone just rubs you wrong, and you're going to focus on that the rest of the day or the rest of the month or whatever, because we're hardwired really to focus on that negative, and we have to retrain our brain to really focus on that positive, to remember who we are in Christ, to flood our mind with Bible verses, get up, have that quiet time, energize yourself, get outside, get the fresh air, retrain your brain, because our brain is receiving thousands of thoughts every single day. And we have to filter those thoughts and go, okay, my brain may be saying, you're no good, why bother? Your time's over, whatever it is, you're never going to amount to anything, your son's going to hate you forever, whatever it is. And we have to retrain our brain and claim the victory in God, read his word, believe him for his word, and then retrain our brain and say, no, my time is not over. God has a perfect plan for me. All my pieces are not here, and God's still putting my puzzle together. So really, really focusing on that positive and retraining it, because I know I am totally wired to focus on the negative. I'm always like, worst case scenario, right? I have a brain tumor, or something. Like, we have to really focus on the positive, because our emotions will lie to us every single time. And the first line of defense is the word of God. It has so much power in it.
Well, very good, honey. I'm with you. I'm just over on the side trying to look through. It doesn't look like there's any other questions. And so I don't want to sit here and beat this thing to death. I'm just checking real quick. So if I look like I'm engaged, I'm reading your comments, folks, to see if there's anything. We took this time to minister to you, and if there's questions, we want to answer them. So I'm taking it active enzymes plus probiotic capsules, and it really helps me. Does that company you partner with have something like that?
Yes.
Oxel.
So basically, the mental wellness company I am partnered with, Newport Beach, their whole program is focused on healing the brain-gut connection. So they focus on, like you said, prebiotics, probiotics, mood. They have things for mood. My very favorite thing from them is a mood supplement I take, and a sleep supplement I take, because I don't sleep well. So I take this mood, I take this sleep, and I also do definitely probiotics, digestive enzymes. I can geek out on this stuff all day long, and Bobby's eyes will start glazing over, but Yes, they do all of that and they do it well. I've interviewed the doctor, the scientist. He's actually has his PhD in nutrition psychology, which is fascinating. He's a very smart, very well-read, humble author. So I don't put my name behind anything that I don't trust and do my research on.
Good. And Janicia had a question. It said, suggestions for a couple beginning the process of trying to conceive who have both had mental health struggles, both been to therapy, but nervous about things like postpartum depression and anxiety. Thoughts on?
Yeah, well, those are all very valid. I had some postpartum depression and anxiety myself. So a lot of things that I talk about are things that I've actually been through, which is why I'm doing what I'm doing. So if you want to hit me up, DM me, I can give you some suggestions on diet and some things that you can incorporate into your diet. And there again, there have been some studies, pretty good journals written on infertility and the gut microbiome. So when I say all health goes back to the gut, I'm not kidding. All health truly does originate from the gut. I would say 99.9% of it does. So while you're trying to conceive, you want to be fertile, you want to make sure you have all that good gut bacteria going on, because science has also shown that when you give birth, you pass down the microbiome that you have to your baby. So, and then that sets you up for what kind of microbiome footprint you're going to have. So, but the good news is we can change this thing in our body. Our gut microbiome can be changed in as little as 3 days. We can start seeing improvements in 3 days. So yeah, DM me and I'll send you some suggestions on things I think you can incorporate into your diet.
You know, one of the things, hon, that I feel like we haven't talked about, but has been very helpful is the idea of being present with mental health. We talk about these past emotions and future emotions that we often sandwich between, right? So you think about your guilt, shame, regret. Those are kind of past emotions. It's when you're thinking about stuff, man, I wish I would have done this differently. So the mom guilt stuff or whatever. And then future emotions, worries, fears, anxieties, how am I going to deal with employment? How am I going to get a job? What's life going to be like after COVID-19? And sometimes when you're stuck between these future emotions and past emotions, it robs you of your peace in the present, and we're not grounded. And for me, because I've always struggled with anxiety, I had to work really hard to slow my mind down. Okay, I mean, I've got an ADD brain, so it's like a popcorn machine, constantly just popping ideas. It's like jing, 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 and so it's fast moving, and I need to learn how to be present and be in the moment. And so I heard somebody once just kind of say, we need to feel the ground beneath our feet, earthing, like my wife likes to go earth in the sand right at the beach. We live right around the corner from the beach. So go put her feet in the sand.
I'm grounding. I'm soaking up all those good nutrients from the sand.
That's right.
It's natural healing. Come on, it's free.
Yeah. So doing stuff like that, but taking a walk, smelling the fresh air, and just making observations to disrupt that process of like, I'm just thinking about my fears and worries and anxieties, or my guilt and my regret and my shame, just being present. And God revealed himself, right? He's, I am, right? Moses said, who should I say sent me? He says, tell him I am, the self-existent one, right? God meets us in the moment, in the present. He's the eternal now. And so we want to be able to connect with him in the moment. And that's one of the dangers of being just driven by our emotional states. It can really rob us. And so it's challenging. Like when I go to bed at night, for example, I try to focus just on my breathing, and some people, that sounds really like it's just a lot of Buddhism and stuff. I go, look, all truth is God's truth. And I'm not a Buddhist for any stretch of the matter, but if being mindful of the moment, if Buddhism talks about that, there's nothing wrong with being mindful in the moment. Being a fully present person. My wife and my kids have seen me so many times where they see, when you're not in the moment, you're detached. And that's the way I feel like I've lived my entire relational life, is in a place of detachment. And so coming into the moment is just allowing you to be a more rich relational person. It's to be more present. I can remember when my son was about 4 years old, he kept saying, "Daddy, turn your head. Daddy, turn your head." He was trying to get his hand to turn my face toward him. Why? Because my son knew if I don't have daddy's eyes, I don't have daddy's heart. Daddy, turn your head. Because he felt like I was detached. And we need to be present with people, with our life. We need to know what's going on, and we lose that. And so go to bed, focus on, when you're breathing, that's the thing you're doing right now. So that helps you to be present when you're focused on, take a deep breath, breathe out. I try to say things like, man, I'm laying on my mattress right now. The fan is blowing. My wife is laying next to me. I'm just making observations. Why is that? Because it's interrupting my thought process to get off of all of my fears and all of my worries and all these other things. And you go, man, is that all it takes to ground yourself? It's very difficult to just be in the moment. But I'm saying that is a important thing for us all to learn.
Yes. Yeah, they say like regret and worry. I think as moms, that mom guilt, dad guilt, regret and worry is kind of like cancer. It just goes in and it just tears things up. It destroys things. So we have to really not live with that regret and worry and surrender all that to God and lay it at his feet and just really live in the moment and do whatever we can to move forward with what we have right now.
Yeah. Well, I think we're going to wrap up because there's we've been on for about an hour. That's kind of about time
we start. I see a few people that are wanting me to reach out, and I am assuming I'm going to be able to get your information from this. If I can't, then just DM me or follow me on social and I will for sure respond. But I'm noticing Johnny and Denise. So yes, I will do everything I can to get in touch with you for sure. Yeah.
And feel free to hit me up on Facebook if you have if you don't have Instagram or whatever, and I can get the message to Heather as well. Just real quickly, Anthony, you asked, your doctor to lower your meds because they're too strong, and the doctor says no. That's an interesting thought right there. Maybe see another doctor would be my advice if you're in that position.
Yeah. And also, I think we just have to be our own best advocate because you know your body better than anyone else, even than a doctor. I'm not saying that they can't help you and facilitate you, but if you know you want to be off of it and you want to lower it, then you need to listen to that and probably find another doctor or just say, hey, I really need this to be lowered so that I can, work my way toward, mental wellness without drugs, if that's what you're wanting.
Yeah. So to kind of wrap up as we're landing this plane before we let you guys go, here's what we try to do. We said that May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So we just wanted to jump on and say, hey, we're committed to mental health. And we recognize what it's like to struggle with depressions and anxieties and ADD and OCD and different tendencies, addiction. They thought, let's just jump on and just say, hey, we need to remove the stigma in the church. We need to really figure out a way to deal with this. I shared a little bit of my story. My wife shared a little bit of her story. We told you about a tool by Henry Cloud coming out to be able to help the local church to have a ministry in place through small groups and so on and so forth to help the church to deal with this mental health crisis. And make no mistake, the church, if you got any visionary thinking going on in the church right now, if you're a pastor, you need to be thinking right now, what are we going to do to meet the deep needs of the mental health crisis? What are the questions that we're going to be answering when the church doors open back up? What are the problems that we can anticipate that the church is going to have? How are we going to minister to people in this time? This is the time to really be ready to think through how it is that we're going to reach people. And mental health is going to be a big thing on this. We talked about kind of my journey with getting on antidepressants and then getting off. And we're saying, hey, there's a season for them to be on them. There might be a season to be off of them. For some people, like, let's say I tried to get off and it was hard. No big deal. I'll stay on it the rest of my life. But we're all different and we've got to respect the differences. So sometimes people need to be some meds that can help. you need to be talking to a doctor on that. We need to remove the stigma on that. Other people might want to lower it or might want to come off. But if you're going to do that, you need to have maybe some supplements in place. And I shared some of the supplements that I have been taking. And so basically, we've then just answered some questions. One of the things that my wife and I want to do coming up now is we want to start dealing with some stuff as it relates to mental health and marriage. We realize that if we're not mentally healthy, it can take a real toll on our marriage. And so keep yourself, connected to what we're doing. Please go and like and subscribe and share my YouTube channel at 1 Minute Apologist. My wife, I want to have her as a guest with me periodically. And in particular, look, one of the greatest ways that we can be an apologetic in our culture is have a marriage that's an apologetic. But it's hard to have an apologetic marriage. It's a defense for Christianity when we're always just fighting our own mental health crap, right? And so if we can be as assistants, we'd love to do that. And so my wife and I, we've done lots of stuff in the counseling arena for married couples. We've spoken around the country to married couples. And so hopefully we can be a resource. So keep your eyes and ears open. We'll be sharing what we plan to do on that next. Any final thoughts, hon?
No, just feel very honored and privileged to be able to be on here and just, talk about how we can facilitate healing with each other and in our communities. So it was just really nice to be here with you guys. So look forward to seeing you again.
Absolutely. Let me pray. Father, I just thank you for everybody that's jumped on. I just pray that you'll bless them, fill them with your spirit, bless their homes. We're probably all going a little COVID crazy. And I just pray that you would help us just to know your peace and your comfort and just help us to all come out of this stronger. And I'm just thankful for those that have listened. If anything heretical came out of our mouths, we know that. Forgive us, Lord, and that's all on us. But wherever there's truth, Lord, help people to know that you're the author of it, you're the creator of it, and may they fall in love with you and desire you. And we just thank you, Lord, for allowing us to have an honest, frank discussion about mental health issues. In Christ's name, amen. Hey, peace out, guys. Great chatting with you, and chat soon.